into organization. There are some things that are that we can't comprehend. I mean, when you confront the other and you begin to dialogue with it about these things, and it begins to lift the veil on these vistas, it becomes unbearable.
Ultimately symbiotic.
Ultimately symbiotic, and ultimately somehow for purposes of departure. Right. The theme of departure, whether it's to another continuum, that a doorway will open and we'll go, or down into the crystalline substructure of the planet, or into the wind. But the theme is that we are finished here. It's interesting that these plants have these messages, because I don't get this from ayahuasca. To me, ayahuasca is maternal and the river, and I often see flow, sediment, the rivers, the sediment, the overturning of minerals, life and death, but not this let us go where no one has ever gone before. On your feet, mankind, the great adventure, and it begins to, march out into this inflated but perhaps true vision of a destiny for us, that we have a destiny, that there is more for us than saving this planet. That must be done. But maybe it's a test, save your planet, and then we'll talk to you.
I don't suppose you have on your agenda a debate with the drug czar?
Actually, within the last 3 hours, the very possibility was raised, showing that we all resonate together. I suggested to Joan and to Gigi that the drug czar be invited here, and that I believe you should meet with your enemies. I love this idea. If any of you have read Encounters with the Archdruid by John McPhee, it's about David Brower, the great conservationist, who was such a radical conservationist that the Sierra Club threw him out. They just couldn't take this guy. And he went down the Grand Canyon with the head of the Bureau of Reclamation, who built Glen Canyon Dam. And they hated each other. They had sworn death practically on each other. And they went down the Grand Canyon together, and each night at the campfire they would set a bottle of scotch between them and work on it and rave. And it's fascinating. It's wonderful. I would love to talk to these people, because you see, I'm as concerned as anyone else about the fact that we're drugging ourselves to death because we can't find what we're looking for. We are dysfunctional, and like an alcoholic or a junkie, we take drugs to forget. We do everything to forget, because had we been in balance over the last few centuries, we never would have gotten into this mess. We're the generation who's having to pay the bills, but these bad habits have been in place for centuries. And the answer to the drug problem lies in psychedelic, self-directed psychedelic therapy is the only way I can say it. I mean, if you ask, what can you do? Straighten yourself out is one answer, and how to do it, that's how to do it. Yes. Didn't you have a question? No, sorry. Yes.
Could you comment on partnership and friendship in shamanic healing? I asked Nicole, and she said you know best.
Partnership and friendship.
As themes of shamanic healing.
Well, shamans are fairly irascible people, I've noticed. Mircea Eliade talks about this in his great study of shamanism, and I think the phrase he finally settles on is essential but peripheral. In other words, the shaman lives in a little house at the edge of the village or a short distance from the village into the forest. And as the keeper of the doorway to these fairly terrifying dimensions that involve life and death, he's a fairly remote character. The friends of shamans are usually shaman themselves. The apprentice relationship is a whole other issue, and in my estimation has been very perverted in the Eastern way of doing things. What I found in the Amazon was that these people were very willing to share most of the secrets that I wanted to know. You had to know a lot to ask the wrong question. Eventually we got to the wrong questions, and they were bewildering. I mean, like, I was very interested, of course, in intensifying and intensifying and intensifying this encounter with the DMT thing. And so I kept asking my shaman teacher about these plants that he was reluctant to talk about that I knew were stronger. And finally he said, it's comida de perro, it's food for dogs. And I didn't know, since my Spanish is so terrible, whether this was an idiom or literal. And he said it's mal y bizarro, strange and evil, and not for Christians. And what he was talking about was simply a more intensified state than what he was working with and curing with in the ayahuasca sessions. So, it's a gradient. It's a thing. I saw a shaman once who had been practicing shamanism for 25 years in the Amazon have an ayahuasca trip where he said after it was over with he'd never do it again. That was it. So, pride goeth before a fall. On the other hand, it's very kind and forgiving and user-friendly to beginners. It's a relationship. It's not a thing. It's a somebody. And if you approach it as a somebody rather than a thing, you will have a much richer time for it, I think. Yes.
Like the Simon's work, visualization, and cellular change for cancer cures, I wonder, do you feel that people can reach this dramatic knowingness that you explained today any other way than via the plant?
Well, this question always comes up, and I'm famous for my answer, so I might as well give it again. No. Well, see, everybody always says, but surely yoga and the Sufis and this. Well, who knows? I haven't had time to check all this out. I did check out yoga. I feel fairly confident in saying that 95% of yoga is absolute hokum. The other 5% is pure gold. But sorting it out among these babas and, keeping your guts intact is just, really a daunting task. However, there is a concept in Hindu thought that I'm interested in. It's the concept of Tantra, usually associated with sexual yoga, but for my purposes, I'm simply interested in the meaning of Tantra. It means shortcut way. It takes the notion that in a single lifetime, you can attain some kind of tremendous reconstruction of your internal horizon of transcendence, a way of saying enlightened without saying it, in a single lifetime. And I'm not enough convinced of any of these theories of reincarnation and so forth to be willing to just write off this lifetime if I make a botch of it. So I'm not only interested in ways that work, but ways which work quickly. And nothing can come close to this psychedelic thing. This